Hey everybody, I'm your host Izzy. Welcome to my Cinema Escape on YouTube. Today's review is based off a cinematic adaptation of a graphic novel that was written by James O'Barr. And as unfortunate as it is, the film is surrounded by the embrace of tragedy. But much like the Phoenix from the Ashes, that tragedy created an amazing form of artistry that I don't believe will ever be duplicated. The film that I'm talking about is a 1994 cult classic, The Crow, starring Brandon Lee, Michael Wincott, Michael Massee, Ernie Hudson, and very much adapted from the graphic novel. It shares a lot of heavy similarities from the original story while making some minor changes here and there. The tragedy, as many were aware of, it resulted in Brandon Lee being tragically killed while filming The Crow. The story is about a couple that was murdered by a violent gang of drug dealers, drug addicts, under the orders of a drug overlord, and a mysterious... This is where the differences come in as far as the story and the film is concerned from the graphic novel perspective and the cinematic perspective. The original graphic novel has the character of Eric Draven that is portrayed by Brandon Lee in the film, is resurrected by a crow / skull cowboy that is the one who is fueling his revenge while giving him certain guidelines as to what he must do in order to maintain a sense of wrong and of right and the wrongs that have been bestowed upon him and his fiancee Shelley Webster. The film, with changes here and there, has the crow as being the main source of his resurrection powers. The story from the graphic novel perspective, and as far as the tone is concerned, is very much in a black and white setting, completely black and white. With the film, director Alex Proyas decided to take that similar approach with how, from the lighting view, is very dreary, dark, gray, wet, very much similar to the graphic novel, with the flashbacks being more in an ethereal red, yellowish tint color that provide a sense of levity and soothing for the character of Eric Draven. The Crow, for all intents and purposes, is deserving of a cult classic status. I remember when I read that Brandon Lee was tragically killed on the set, it depressed me immensely because I remember watching Rapid Fire and Laser Mission, and I just knew that there was something special about him. He just had a very charming, articulate, fluid-like motion within him that was very similar to his father, and to see that talent just be completely snuffed away from a very negligent way of taking care of the actor and the stunts on the set, it just makes you wish that you could go back in time and change and alter the course of history. Because had Brandon Lee not passed away the way he did, chances are astronomically high that he would have reached a level of superstardom that he would most likely be one of the biggest action stars even in 2020. And little known fact that, please, if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct me. But I remember when the Matrix was in the early stages of being produced, the Wachowski brothers even stated that Brandon Lee was the one they had in mind for the character of Neo. So it's sad as to what happened. But back to The Crow. The Crow is very much a dark, dreary, dramatic action piece that is Shakespearean and Othello-ish in its execution, while still maintaining a sense of tragedy but humor and wonderful emotional acting. Brandon Lee is phenomenal as Eric Draven. I mean, he presents that whole tormented soul, and the beautiful thing about his performance is anyone who has watched Brandon Lee before, whether it's in Laser Mission, Rapid Fire, or even some episodes of Kung Fu, while movements of his martial arts were flashy and very fluid, in this adaptation, there's nothing flashy or fluid about the character of Eric Draven. He's very much an everyman character that died in a fashion that was very horrific, along with his fiancée Shelley Webster. And Brandon Lee just portrays that character of being sadistic, tormented, while also maintaining a childlike innocence within him that you can't really see another actor carrying that specific characteristics. And he does an amazing job. And you watch the film and it just makes you sad, because it's just that talent we'll never truly know or get to experience a talent like his ever again, because he's gone. And it's a tragedy altogether. Ernie Hudson is more or less he plays Officer Albrecht. He is a very similar everyman, but also provides some necessary levity. You have Tony Todd, who plays Michael Wincott's right-hand man who Michael Wincott portrays a sadistic drug lord, Top Dollar. And he does a phenomenal job as well. He is what a true villain, true antagonistic villain is all about, and you want to see him get his just desserts. From an action perspective, the film is top-notch. Just realistic stunts, realistic explosions, gunfires. The shootout at Top Dollar's headquarters is one of the greatest action sequences of all time. Now, with having said that, there are certain scenes where you could tell because of the death of Brandon Lee, Miramax was initially not going to release the film. They were just going to put it in a can and forget about it, because they decided to put more money into it. Scenes that where Brandon Lee hadn't completed yet, they had to use stunt doubles and early forms of CGI where they had to digitally impose Brandon Lee's face on the stunt double in order to make sure that the film manages to maintain a sense of flow without it being too obvious. But at the time, when you first watched it, you really couldn't tell. However, when you watch it now, it is very obvious. It's very similar to what they did with Paul Walker with Furious 7. But it's still, because of those necessary changes, it manages to still be a wonderful, complicated, intricate, and tragic story that still to this very day moves the emotional core of your soul. Overall, The Crow is a cult classic. Nothing will ever change that. And I am so glad that they decided to move away from the remake that was going to initially star Jason Momoa while also being more faithful to the graphic novel. I'm so glad they moved away from it, because you can't recreate this. There's a reason why this film is the way it is, and there's a reason why it's so monumentally and heavily revered within the comic book community and even the general public, because this is still such a magical and tragic film that to try to recreate this, it would be almost the best way to put it, and maybe this is an exaggeration on my part, the best way to put it would almost deem it blasphemous, because again, this is such a special film, and while the sequels didn't necessarily live up to what this one did, it's very hard to judge the sequels harshly, because they as I mentioned, they've had to follow up something like this, and you can't follow up anything like this, especially without the original actor being involved with the sequels in and of itself. And then also you have to remember they attempted to do a spin-off with a television series, which wasn't bad, but again, without Brandon Lee, it doesn't have that same sense of integrity and magic. Overall, though, The Crow, 1994, classic. A true classic film that, while embraced within the arms of tragedy, I still love it to this very day. And no matter how many times I've watched it, I never get tired of it. And I sincerely hope anyone who has watched this film, I know will most likely agree with me, but anyway, if you haven't watched this film, I do recommend it. It is a 5 out of 5 experience, 2 thumbs up. Not for children, definitely not for children, so do not show this film to your kids. I will say it's okay for maybe 12 or 13-year-old, but anything below that is a no-no. But again, The Crow, 2 thumbs up, 5 out of 5. Let me know in my comment section on my Facebook what you thought about it. Let me know on my YouTube channel what you thought about it. Provide a like. And the next review, I'm not sure what it'll be, but you'll be hearing from me again, my friends. Take care and peace out.